Distinguished Vice Chairman of the committee, Dr. Burgess, for any questions he may have.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Chair Griffith, let me just ask you if you could clarify, because we kind of heard conflicting information. The current temporary scheduling of fentanyl-related substances, has it saved lives during the time it's been in effect?
We believe that it has, and the reason that we believe that is that it stopped the cartels from trying to figure out ways around. Now, does that stop fentanyl? Does that stop other opioids? No, it does not. But it does stop deaths by the analogs. That has occurred, and it makes it easier on law enforcement to both intercept without having folks be chemistry majors or master's degrees on the front lines of our law enforcement. It makes it a whole lot easier to test, and if it turns out that there is an analog, we don't have to worry about it being thrown out of court because they've somehow found the way around the law. So it helps the frontline law enforcement. That's why DEA said this was one of the most important things in one of our hearings that we held this year, one of the most important pieces of legislation that they could get to help them. And we believe that the research component, should there be found anything that is efficacious in medical terms, and so far there's only one that has any sign that, at least the testimony in front of the committee has only said there was one of the ones that have been tested that might have some benefit, but we're way too early. But that's why we put the research component in there, so that we could find out and then deschedule it appropriately if it did have medical benefit.
And the research component is important. I don't think it was this Congress. I think it was the previous Congress. And again, I don't unfortunately remember the name of the individual or the agency that they represented, but they speculated that there could be one of these analogs that's safer than water, and you wouldn't want to prevent that from coming forward. Pretty big stretch, but nevertheless, you actually provide a pathway. If there is one of these that is safer than water and has additional benefits, there is the research path to elucidate that.
There is, and if I could clear up another issue that I understand it gets confusing and things happen. My colleague and friend indicated that there'd been some kind of a veto message. There's not been. In fact, and it's one of those things, I'm happy to give it to you all if you want it, but it came out today. I was a little surprised as well. You have a copy of it. That the White House actually came out. They didn't say vote for HR 647, but on HR 467, they said the administration calls on Congress to pass all of these critical measures to improve public safety and save lives, after fully describing the bill. And they referenced that in their numbers.
Right, but the gentleman yielded. I'm sorry if I gave that impression.
Yeah.
I mean, basically the way I read this, and you can read it or give it to you if you want, is saying what I said, which is that they agree with the two components.
That's correct.
Permanent scheduling and research, but they would like the legislation to include the additional provisions that were in the president's proposal, which I mentioned.
And I think that's accurate. They would like that, but they also encourage that we get these two done. And I'm open to discussing further measures as we move forward. That's why I call this a building block. It is not meant to be something that is, the be-all to end-all. But the research is, to me, and as you know, Dr. Burgess, this is something I've talked about in Energy and Commerce a lot. Getting the research done on these substances that appear to be dangerous, but making sure we have all the research has always been important to me on both this substance and others, which is why, in order to introduce this bill, I wanted to make sure it had that research component. We don't really have that capability now. Our universities are a little nervous with the temporary scheduling. They're nervous about getting involved in doing any research. This clears the path, makes it clear what they can do and what they can't do, how you register to do the research. I think that's a very important component of this bill, because it will allow us, if there's something that it works out to be a positive from a medical standpoint, we're not just putting a stiff arm on it. We're telling our universities, go research it, see if you find something. And if you do, fine, we'll reschedule quickly. If not, then we won't. And right now we're in that, they haven't found anything yet. But there's really not been enough research done to say that out of the 4,800 analogs, that there's nothing out there. But
right.
Thus far, there hasn't been anything that has been earth-shattering or something that we really need to help people medically.
So it seems as if there's a difference of opinion as to whether or not the president would veto this. It strikes me that the judicious way to approach that will be to pass Mr. Griffith's bill, send it to the president, and see if he vetoes it. I mean, that will answer the question, won't it, Mr. Pallone?
Yeah, but the point I'm trying to make, Dr. Burgess, is that this bill isn't going to do anything different than what we already have, right? Okay, other than the research. But the point with the research,
if I may,
yes,
that's a
but
pretty big
understand
step.
But understand one thing, and that is you talked about an off-ramp. In other words, yes, if you do the research and find out that some of these drugs actually have a beneficial use, which we believe there is evidence of that, the bill doesn't provide for that off-ramp. I mean, all I'm saying to you is that there's three things that are not included and that the president is mentioning. One is that there should be some off-ramp, so if the research shows that in fact if some of these drugs shouldn't be scheduled,
I think it's there.
then they can be taken off. That's not allowed under the bill. And you know how hard it is to go back and make a change. And then the second thing is that we not have mandatory penalties unless the offense is serious based on life or limb. And then the third thing I believe is that the president recommended, I think I mentioned it, was this idea that individuals convicted of an offense involving these analogs that subsequently removed or rescheduled can seek a reduced or vacated sentences. So I guess what I'm trying to say is, why not, rather than just pass a bill that makes this permanent when it's already, in fact, the law, why not use this opportunity to do some of these other things that I think will make a difference? Because right now, there's no reason to believe that this bill is going to make a difference.
Yeah. I would just ask the question why you didn't do that in the last Congress when you obviously had an opportunity to. Yes, Mr. Griffith.
Well, and if I might say, I believe the off-ramp is there. When you take the language in the bill combined with current law, I think that creates a coupling and that there is an off-ramp. And all the other items that my good friend just indicated, that the White House and the Democrats would want, they're all part of the Judiciary Committee's jurisdiction. And we're trying to get something passed that will have a positive impact, and that research component is very positive. The permanent scheduling is positive in the sense that we don't have to come back every 2 years and do it again. But the research component, I think, is extremely positive. But if we had to send this back and go through the hoops of the Judiciary Committee, it would take us years perhaps to get anything done. Let's get what we can get done and have that discussion another day, because as I have said many times, I do believe that it is proper for us as a body to have a debate on mandatory minimums and take a look at it, and the whole business about if it's descheduled, if a particular analog is descheduled, taking a look at any convictions that may have occurred under that. I think that's a proper discussion, but it has to start in the Judiciary Committee, not in Energy and Commerce, and it can't be added to this bill properly. Even though Rules has great leeway in many things, we clipped that a little bit with our new rule on germaneness. So I believe that any of those amendments would not be germane, and if allowed on the floor, would be subject to a challenge under the new rule. So I recognize the desire and the past practice that you all might have been able to do that, but let's get this little simple bill. I don't disagree with my colleague. It's not a giant bill, but sometimes you can do really good work with a series of little bills.
Yeah. And, I mean, the fact is, we're talking about, what, 104, 107,000 deaths per year? I mean, there is a degree of urgency here, and it does rise to the level of let's fix what we can. And if we can come back and fix other stuff later, we should do that. I know you've worked on this a long time, and I really appreciate the work product that you've turned in, and I think the rule ought to reflect that and bring it to the floor in a timely manner. And if the president wants to veto that, then he's free to do so. But I think it would be an enormous mistake, given the amount of suffering that this compound has caused, coupled with the fact that we have a porous southern border that is just allowing this stuff to pour in. Chairman Johnson, let me just ask you a question, if I could. We're kind of in an unusual position here. The Senate's already acted, and now we're being called upon to act. So that's a new phenomenon for most people, but it's a significant opportunity for the House now to rubber stamp what the Senate has done and send that down to the president to see how he feels about it.
Well, it is, and, you know, there's, my colleague, Ranking Member Pallone said that didn't see a lot of overwhelming outside support, but that's different than the information that I have. The American Trucking Association, the Owner-Operator Independent Drivers Association, the Transportation Intermediaries Association, the National Tank Truck Carriers, the Truckload Carriers Association, the National Federation of Independent Business have come out in support of this, and I guarantee you that the American consumer will come out in support when they find out that this rule, if it goes into effect, is going to require the cost of everything that's transported by truck to go up even higher, driving inflation even higher than it is today.
Sure. And our truckers were unsung heroes during the pandemic. They were the ones that worked every day to make sure that getting through that tough time, we had what we needed to do so. And so I appreciate very much you, unfortunately, the Senate acted first and took away from you the pleasure of moving first with this, but I think we ought to support the Senate in their efforts. Thank you, Mr.